A fresh warning, a familiar target. It is India. Trump, that is Donald Trump, US President, has set a 24-hour deadline, and he has said that tariffs on Indian imports will go up very substantially because India is still buying Russian oil. And the provocation from the US President doesn't stop here. He has gone on to say, and I quote him, India has not been a good trading partner. Donald Trump goes further, and he has accused India of fueling the Russian war machine. Sharp, provocative language from the US President is coming at a time when India has issued a statement, keeping it away from rhetoric and pretty diplomatic and straightforward. So what has India said? And I'll ask the producer to put that graphics on the television screens now. Let's take a look. What India has said is that it started importing Russian oil only after the Ukraine conflict began. What India has said is that the US itself actively encouraged India to do so to stabilize global markets. That those pointing fingers at India are themselves doing business with Russia. That the US is still buying Russian minerals, fertilizers and chemicals. And finally, that this targeting of India is unjustified and unreasonable. The gloves are off, clearly. Trump has provoked India again. Will India be responding? Before I bring in the politicians, I have Lisa Curtis joining us. She is the Director for Indo-Pacific Security at the Center for a New American Security and former Deputy Assistant to the President. She was part of the first Trump administration. Ms. Curtis, one wonders what is really Donald Trump's game plan here. This is another threat, and this time he has said that he will increase the tariffs substantially within 24 hours. Would you see this as pressure tactics ahead of the deal so that India agrees to his demands? And how do you read India's response?
Well, I think that President Trump is putting the pressure on. He's raising the stakes, trying to get India to complete a good trade deal. But the problem is, I think, in his approach, and he is really putting India on the spot. I think some of this should have been handled less out of the public eye, more privately. For instance, India does rely on Russian oil imports, but that's only in the last few years. India, before Russia invaded Ukraine, hardly imported any Russian energy at all. So that would have been, I think, something that India could have made a concession on. They could have gradually reduced their dependence on Russian oil. However, now that Trump has put this out in the public realm and, really put India on the spot, I think India's back is against the wall, and Prime Minister Modi will be less likely to be able to make that kind of concession if it looks like he's giving in directly to President Trump. So I think, unfortunately, President Trump's very public criticisms of India, particularly on the Russia issue, is making it more difficult for the two sides to come to an agreement. And it's really starting to escalate to a very serious level.
Okay, so Ms. Curtis, because Trump is linking tariffs on India directly to its oil trade with Russia, is this purely a trade issue? Or are you sensing some kind of signaling coming from the second Trump term, which there might be some kind of recalibration of the US-India strategic equation?
Well, I think that the tensions between India and the United States have been building ever since the aftermath of the India-Pakistan conflict. I think that India was irritated with President Trump publicly taking full responsibility for the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, talking about mediating on Kashmir, and then inviting the Pakistani Chief of Army Staff Field Marshal to the Oval Office. All of this, I think, was very irritating to India. And I think, likewise, President Trump didn't like the fact that India was directly contradicting the idea that he had helped broker the ceasefire, while Pakistan is talking about President Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. So I think he, has become irritated with India. I think Indian officials are irritated with President Trump. And then on top of that, the trade talks seemed to be going well a few weeks ago. And all of a sudden, we started hearing that there were problems, probably over India not providing access to its agriculture sector. And so I think that the Russian oil issue has sort of been piled on as, one more issue. But it also does denote President Trump's frustration with Putin, and he's trying to do both. He's trying to put pressure on Putin, but he's also, pressuring India, and I think it's, like I said, it's becoming quite, quite bad in terms of what the damage that could be done to the longer term strategic partnership that both sides have been investing in for the past 2 decades.
That's right. And Donald Trump is continuing to make the most bizarre statements. I mean, look at the statement which has come in only today, that India isn't a good trading partner. Do such sweeping statements then risk undoing years of carefully built bipartisan momentum in US-India ties, especially in certain sectors like the defense and tech cooperation?
I think they could potentially damage the longer term relationship because he's, directly criticizing India. He's, criticizing India's policies on a broad array of issues, and he's doing it repeatedly over a period of time. So I think this could do damage to Indian trust and confidence in the United States as a strategic partner. And it could become more costly for Prime Minister Modi in terms of his domestic political standing to be able to, reach out to the United States and continue to build the relationship. So I think that, unfortunately, the way President Trump is handling the India partnership is sort of textbook how not to handle the India relationship, criticizing India so publicly, seemingly taking Pakistan's side on the India-Pakistan conflict, not being sensitive to Indian terrorism concerns, the fact that, India was attacked on April 22nd, and then going ahead and inviting, the head of the Pakistan military into the Oval Office, less than a month after that attack. So I think really, unfortunately, even though President Trump had spent a lot of time building relations with India during his first term, he seems to be more emboldened, less concerned with having a good relationship with India this time around.
Okay.
Things are definitely different than the first Trump administration when it comes
Visibly
to
different.
India-US relations.
Visibly different, Ms. Curtis. From your time in the Trump administration, since you were making that comparison, how much of this kind of tough talk is rhetoric versus actual policy intent? And should New Delhi then take these tariff threats at face value?
Well, look, this has always been Trump's negotiating style. Even during the first Trump term, before he would meet with Prime Minister Modi, a few days before, he would start tweeting out about India's high tariffs. He used to complain about the high tariffs on Harley-Davidson motorcycles, for example. So he has always used these tactics. But what's different this time around is the combination of the geopolitical issues coming into play, the India-Pakistan issue, and not being sensitive to Indian terrorism concerns. And also, just like I said, the fact that he's repeating these criticisms over and over, and willing to escalate the criticisms, and he's having other people in his administration. We've now seen Stephen Miller, jump into the chorus of criticizing India. The Treasury Secretary also had made some remarks. So I think this is quite different, and I do think that India should view this as his negotiating tactics. And I think the calmer that Indian officials can be, the better for sort of, both countries and the future of their relationship. But like I said, I think this is going to be difficult for Prime Minister Modi when the opposition is attacking him for, not standing up for Indian interests. So he's going to have to watch the domestic political reaction to these remarks. But you're right that it would be best if Indian officials can view these Trump statements as negotiating tactics and not really a signal about where he wants to take the larger strategic relationship. I don't think he is thinking in strategic ways. I think that if he was thinking strategically about the U.S.-India relationship, he would not be moving in this direction, because India is an important partner of the United States. The U.S. and India do have strategic convergences when it comes to the China threat, and he is risking that long-term strategic partnership. I do think he is risking that by his current tactics.
All right, Lisa Curtis, pleasure having you on the show tonight. Joining me now is Dr. Mukesh Aghi, President and CEO of USISPF. Dr. Aghi, how do you read Donald Trump's remarks calling India, quote unquote, not a good trading partner? US President Donald Trump has gone on to say that he would increase the tariffs against India very substantially over the next 24 hours because of India's continued purchases of Russian oil. Given the strategic and economic ties, is this rhetoric or a serious policy threat in the making?
Well, you have to understand that in the current administration in the White House, rhetoric and policy, they seem to intermingle. And what we are seeing is a lot of policy announcements are being made through social media. So sometimes it's very hard to define is this rhetoric or policy statement. But what we are seeing is that for whatever reason, the president is irked with India. And then on a daily basis, we are seeing certain tweets coming out through social media, basically accusing India of being not a good trading partners or India not being a good friend. And I think that's not helping the environment between the two countries.
But Donald Trump here has linked India's purchase of Russian oils to punitive tariffs. How much of this is about geopolitics rather than trade imbalance, and what signal does this send to Delhi, particularly at a time when trade talks between Delhi and Washington is ongoing?
Well, you have to understand from an India perspective, and that is, it is going to buy oil from countries where you can, from wherever it's cheaper, because it has to maintain its domestic demand, it has to maintain its inflationary issue. But at the same time, I think the tweet coming out from the president says that India is making money. So I think basically the irk which is coming out is more about buying the oil, reprocessing it, and selling in the open market and making a lot of money. I mean, say Europe is buying much more. Europe bought LNG worth almost $70+ billion last year. China is buying it, but they're buying it for internal consumption rather than buying it to make money itself. And I think that's where the big difference is.
So if we were to, look at a possibility here, if Donald Trump follows through and raises tariffs very substantially, quote unquote, in 24 hours, what sectors of Indian exports to the US, according to you, will be hit the hardest, and then how should India respond?
Well, you have to understand that, at the moment, the announced tariff is 25%, and pharma was exempted. But what I understand is in the new tariff announcement, which is supposed to come out, pharma may be included in that.
Yes.
And India has to do what it has to do to protect its interest, to protect its exporters. And so in the mid to long term, I think India has to look at alternative market, to look at basically how do you basically subsidize the exporter from a tax perspective, from an incentive perspective. And so If US is not the lucrative market for Indian goods, then they'll find other sources itself. So it is a challenging situation. It's a difficult situation. I believe that what we need to do is bring the temperature down between the two countries, especially in social media. And Trump, we have seen him. When you go into public debate with him on any issue, he does not back down. He just keeps on raising the temperature. And I think it's prudent on part of India to see and explore how to bring the temperature down.
So let me ask you, how do you bring the temperature down here? India's response has been through Ministry of External Affairs in the form of a press release. There are no government official or prime minister here or any of the senior ministers who have taken to Twitter or any other social media platforms to respond to US president. There is a great degree of caution on part of India.
No, absolutely. I think India has been very measured. India has explained its position. In fact, the purchase of Russian oil, in fact, was encouraged by the Biden administration to stabilize global prices. And if you move away overnight, India buys 2 million barrels of oil every day. It is going to basically have an inflationary impact on the oil prices all across the world itself. So I think what we have to do is it's not just India basically being as a government being cautious. I think when you look at the social media from India, it has been creating more and more noise and focus on insulting the president. I think that's also creeping to the whole thinking within the White House. So I think the objective here is not to say, hey, India, bring the administration, bring the temperature down. I think we have to figure out how do you basically get rest of the social media to basically bring the temperature down and calm things between the two countries.
Okay, Dr. Agi, let me try and sum up this conversation with you with my last question. You work closely with both the governments. What back channel conversations or interventions might be happening right now to manage or diffuse this tariff escalation before it turns into a larger diplomatic standoff?
I think a call between the prime minister and the president is important. President respects the prime minister. He calls him. He's a good friend of mine, and I think a call will help bring the temperature down. A call will help looking at the tariffs in a much more reasonable manner. You have to understand both Howard Lutnick and Jameson Greer, the USTR chief, had proposed to the president a deal with India, and I think that somehow, somewhere, it just went disarray. So I think it's important that leadership basically talk to each other and study the ship rather than going in different direction here.
All right, Dr. Mukesh Agi, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Joining me now is Sujit Kumar, BJP MP, and also Jebby Mathur, who is a Member of Parliament of the Congress. Ms. Mathur, don't you think that today and right now, given how there is a rising escalation with the kind of statements that are being made by Donald Trump, the political class in India should be speaking in one voice, because it's about also sending a message that there cannot be multiple readings. It's about the foreign policy, and tariffs and trade in particular is in the interest of the nation.
Maria, as we are discussing about the consequences or the key sectors, how it will be impacted with the 25% tariff hike and the penalties, additional penalties, as we are discussing that, what we hear in the CNBC interview by President Trump is that a 24-hour deadline is being given, and he categorically says that substantially there will be more increase on tariff rates. So where is this threat? What is this threat? And how are we responding? Where is our diplomatic channels? Where do we stand? See, with Howdy Modi and with Namaste Trump and Abki Bar Modi, Abki Bar Trump Sarkar and all that. See, what the nation saw was made to look like what a great friend, but and the tone was ये दोस्ती हम नहीं तोड़ेंगे मेरी जीत मेरी गम मेरी तेरी गम was the mood which was portrayed. But now what has happened is clearly dost na raha. Pyar na raha. So it's very clear. See, when we are discussing itself, we are seeing right now I just saw a flash news saying that there's a ceasefire violation by Pakistan. So the geopolitical politics itself is a threat now with only, it's not just Pakistan anymore. Pakistan, China, and
Ma'am, since you have
America.
talked about that ceasefire violation, in fact, the Indian Army has issued a clarification that there has been no ceasefire violation along the line of control.
Okay, that's fine. I agree, but I just shared the thought as I saw it in the
No, because it
media.
has just come, so I thought I'll highlight that as
No,
well.
that's good you clarified. I'm happy that there's no ceasefire violation. But in any case, the geopolitics has changed, and the way, the kind of threat. See, how do we call America a friend anymore? Does India have a friend? Where's the diplomatic channels? Our sectors, key sectors, be it pharmaceuticals, engineering, other businesses, are all affected, will be affected by the 25% tariff hike. And then we see President Trump saying that with a 24 hours deadline, he is going to substantially increase the tariff. And
does
India
India
is
really
not
have
for
a
trade,
game plan there?
not a good place for trade.
Sujit
Russia
Kumar,
buying oil from Russia.
the
all
threats
this is what
from
we get
Donald
in
Trump is
India. But
only
we don't
increasing
hear
with
from
every
Prime
passing
Minister. We
day.
don't hear from
Yes.
External Affairs Minister. We don't hear. Where are we heading to?
So the point that has been raised by the Congress party of concerns to various sectors is not really legitimate. They have valid concerns. Okay, Sujit Kumar, if you hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. So my question is that the concerns being raised by Congress party or other leaders in opposition with regards to the impact that this will have, constant threats coming in from Donald Trump, the US president directly taking to Twitter and saying that there'll be an increase in tariffs. What impact will it have and how prepared is India?
See, first of all, it's laughable that the Congress party, which actually coined the slogan "Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai," and the disastrous consequences of that is known to everyone in 1962 and even much before that. So the Congress party has no locus standi to now even comment on this issue. Coming back to what's going on with Mr. Donald Trump's daily tweet, it's actually his hypocrisy and frustration that is on display. India's stand has been principled, pragmatic, and balanced. And let me tell you that, and through you to the entire nation, that the present government led by Prime Minister Modi is thoroughly prepared. Yes, we might have some short-term hiccups. Yes, this has come, as very unjustified, unreasonable from President Trump. But he is known to behave like this, not only with regards to India, but on every issue we see a very, very, dictatorial and unpragmatic behavior. So, coming back to the 25% tariff and the threat of even increasing that further, we are prepared. There will be some short-term hiccups for sure, particularly with regards to our pharma industry and a few other industries. But we have taken a justified stand in the national interest, in the interest of our economic security, in the interest of our energy security. We have to make energy affordable and accessible to 1.4 billion citizens of India. That is why we had to buy oil from Russia. And as a sovereign nation, we have every right to buy it from wherever it's available at a price which is, beneficial to our national interest. So all we are doing is following our national interest without breaking any international rules. Okay. So the government of the day is extremely seized and focused on this matter. For us, nation first philosophy has always been prominent. And I assure you that, our farmers, our entrepreneurs, our MSMEs are the top priority for the government, and their interest is our top priority.
Jabi Mathur, here is the government which has put India's interest first, and that is perhaps one way of reading is coming in the form of repeated, frustration or the statements which is coming in from Donald Trump, because India has refused to give in to the pressure which is coming in from the United States.
Where do we see the strong stand taken by India, Maria? Where do we hear the Prime Minister saying anything? Do we hear the External Affairs Minister saying anything? And my good friend Sujit Kumar, he made a mention that everybody knows about Donald Trump that he is dictatorial and he will say anything. So does he mean, he has to clarify, does he mean that was Mr. Modi supporting Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar? So knowing well that this dictatorial tendencies of Trump, was he saying about this Namaste Trump and Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar? So assertiveness, the strong leadership is totally absent in as far as India is concerned. And also, see, he was saying about Congress. Congress has taken a strong stand with US. We know how when the 7 fleet was arriving, the Indira Gandhi took a very strong stand and said, if your fleet comes, we are not going to retrieve from our thing. We will go ahead. And very confidently and with strongly we took a stand. Even Rajiv Gandhi had the diplomatic relations to maintain both Russia and US. But where do we see? We don't see any friend for India, whether it's our neighborhood, whether it's our immediate neighbors, whether it's big countries. Where do we see? Where there is a total lack of leadership, strong leadership, strong assertiveness is totally absent, and that is something which is a high concern. He is saying in the interest of India. Who is speaking about interest? We get to hear only Trump saying all these things. Anyway, the reality is 25% tariff rate hike is in place from August 1st. And now we hear there's going to be a substantial rise. What the ministry, MES,
Quickly respond to all those charges coming in from the Congress party, Sujit Kumar.
I will. It's unfortunate for the nation actually that we have an opposition party, the leading opposition party, Congress party, believes the US version more, believes the Pakistani version more than what our armed forces have to say, what the legitimately elected, democratically elected government of the day has to say. In fact, don't take my words for it. I can give you evidence. The June 2025 edition of Congress Sundays, which is their mouthpiece, on page 22, who have they quoted? They have quoted Friday Times, Maria. Please check it. They have quoted Friday Times to justify and to attack India's foreign policy. Well, you don't believe the armed forces, fine. You don't believe the elected government of the country, fine. At least you could have, gone for some global Western media houses, Washington Post, NYT. You found the Friday Times of Pakistan to justify your stand and to attack the government of the country, of our nation. Well, that is Congress party. Coming back, to what my dear friend JB has just said, that no country stood with us. TRF was mentioned as and was prescribed by the United Nations Security Council. Okay, Pakistan went across the world trying to delete the name of TRF without any success. Almost all the countries have condemned Pahalgam. And when the multi-party delegation went across the world, there was genuine understanding of India's concern.
Okay.
Now coming back to the tariff, yes, this is a temporary hiccup. I myself acknowledge that yes, we will have some hiccups in the short term. Because Donald Trump is
Sujit
totally
Kumar, we have really come to the end of this discussion. So thank you so much for joining us, and Jabi Mathur of the Congress Party, Sujit Kumar there of the BJP. That's all from me on this edition of The Last Word. We are putting out this entire discussion on NDTV.com. Thanks so much for watching.